Hare Krishna Guru Das Prabhu. Namaha Namaha.
Haribola Kendra.
Jai Jai. Jai Maharaj. Obeisances. Hare Krishna.
Hi, Kendra. Hare Krishna.
I'm going to start us off and lead us in some kirtan. Then I'm going to make Tulsi Priya the host. Today was a day of signing leases with my mother, so my brain is done.
We have the privilege of seeing two Akendras, not just one.
I don't know if that's a privilege. Okay. All right. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Om Bhagavad Purnamamsa Pariprajaka Kacharya Stotra Sadasri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavin Ki Jai, Nam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Radha Kunidi Vivitam Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadik Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Ki Jai, Gangamani Ki Jai, Jamanamani Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hari Bol. Thank you so much, Maharaj, and thank you everyone for being here tonight for Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayādvaita Swami. We are reading in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th chapter. Tonight, we're starting with text number 37, I believe. Maharaj has that in the chat, and I think that sounds correct. And oh yes, it is Monday, September 12th, 2022 in the Western world. And we look forward to hearing your comments and questions as usual. And please take advantage of the links for the classes and share them with your friends. Expand the kirtan. Thus we'll all enjoy life. And we're so happy you could be with us, Maharaj, today from Sri Vrindavan Dham. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Kendra Prabhu. We're having connection issues this morning, so if there's anything that's rough, you can let us know. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tattvanam Bhagavan Tesham Kotidha Pratisankramaha Tatremam Ka Upashiran Ka Usvid Anushedate. Please describe how many dissolutions there are for the elements of material nature, and who survives after the dissolutions to serve the Lord while he is asleep. Purport. In the Brahma Samhita, it is said that all the material manifestations with innumerable universes appear and disappear with the breathing of Mahavishnu lying in Yoga Nidra, or mystic sleep. Yakaranarnavajale bhajati sma yoga nidramananta jagadanda saroma kupaha adhara shaktim avalambya tadam smamurtim govindam adipurusham samahang bhajami yasyayaka nishvasita kalamatavalambya Jivanti Loma Vilaja Jagadandhanata Vishnur Mahan Siha Yasya Tala Vishesho Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Govinda, the ultimate and supreme personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, lies sleeping unlimitedly on the causal ocean in order to create unlimited numbers of universes during that sleep. He lies on the water by his own internal potency, and I worship that original supreme Godhead. Due to his breathing, innumerable universes come into existence. And when he withdraws his breath, there occurs the dissolution of all the lords of the universes. That plenary portion of the Supreme Lord is called Mahavishnu, and he is a part of Lord Krishna. I worship Govinda, the original Lord. After the dissolution of the material manifestations, the Lord and his kingdom beyond the causal ocean do not disappear, nor do the inhabitants, the Lord's associates. The associates of the Lord are far more numerous than the living entities who have forgotten the Lord due to material association. The impersonalist explanation of the word aham in the 4 verses of the original Bhagavatam, aham me vasa me vagre, etc., is refuted here. The Lord and his eternal associates remain after the dissolution. Vidura's inquiry about such persons is a clear indication of the existence of all the paraphernalia of the Lord. This is also confirmed in the Kashi Kanda, as quoted by Jiva Goswami, both Jiva Goswami and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, who follow in the footsteps of Srila Sridhar Swami. Nachyavante yad bhakta mahatyam pralayapadi atochuto kile loke saeka sarvago vyaha. The devotees of the Lord never annihilate their individual existences, even after the dissolution of the entire cosmic manifestation. The Lord and the devotees who associate with him are always eternal in both the material and spiritual worlds. Om Jnana Timidandhasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Vistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mahyam Tathati Sapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jatapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Shagrashatam Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Vijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Kakute Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostude Tapta Kam Shanagaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Krisha Panu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Mansha Gopatavyudhyasya Kripa Sindho Yaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Shadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Tatvanam Bhagavan Tesham Katita Padisankrama Tatremam Kaluta Shiram Gauri Srid Nishevate. We know that there's creation and dissolution by the Mahavishnu. But the question here is, after the dissolution, what's left? What is that? The impersonalists will say that this creation and destruction are going on as some sort of illusory function, but really there's only the undivided, absolute reality, and everything else is illusion. But here, it's clear from the questions of the question of Vidura that personality persists after the dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. The Lord continues to exist as an individual person, and the living entities, the liberated souls, continue to exist with the Lord to serve him. That seems to be the essence of the topic. Any questions, comments? It's nice to see Srila Prabhupada's original translations of the Brahma Samhita verses, original in the sense of being not copied directly from a edition published by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. It's always a special flavor of seeing Srila Prabhupada retranslate a verse. Purushasya cha samsthanam sarupam vaparasya cha jnanam cha naikamam yattat purushasya prayojanam. Well, before we go on, there's a comment by Gurudas, who survives after the dissolutions to serve the Lord while he's asleep. When I read this, I think of Advaita Acharya's worship of the Ganges, pleading for Lord Chaitanya to manifest, and all the other great personalities who knew of Lord Chaitanya's appearance in his particular form and qualities before his appearance. All of the forms of the Lord are eternally existing. Not only Krishna, but Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and so many forms in Vaikuntha are continue to exist after everything else is destroyed. Thank you for that. What are the truths regarding the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead? What are their identities? What are the specific values in the knowledge in the Vedas? And what are the necessities for the spiritual master and his disciples? Purport. The living entities are constitutionally servitors of the Lord, who can accept all kinds of service from everyone. It is clearly declared, Bhagavad Gita 5:29, that the Lord is the supreme enjoyer of the benefits of all sacrifices and penances, the proprietor of all that is manifested, and the friend of all living entities. That is his real identity. Therefore, when the living entity accepts this supreme proprietorship of the Lord and acts in that attitude, he resumes his real identity. In order to elevate the living entity to this standard of knowledge, there's the necessity of spiritual association. The bona fide spiritual master desires that his disciples know the process of rendering transcendental service to the Lord. And the disciples also know that they have to learn about the eternal relationship between God and the living entity from a self-realized soul. To disseminate transcendental knowledge, one must retire from mundane activities on the strength of enlightenment in knowledge in terms of Vedic wisdom. That is the sum and substance of all the questions in this verse. The importance of spiritual association is mentioned here. The absolute need for the association of the spiritual master and disciple. And the Prabhupada says the spiritual master desires that the disciples know the process of rendering transcendental service to the Lord. And the disciples also know that they have to learn about the eternal relationship between God and the living entity from a self-realized soul. That's the substance of what's to be learned in that relationship. Interesting, this last line. To disseminate transcendental knowledge, one must retire from mundane activities on the strength of enlightenment and knowledge in terms of Vedic wisdom. One naturally thinks of sannyas, giving up, retiring from mundane activities on the strength of enlightenment and knowledge. And if not formal sannyas, then at least genuine detachment from material affection. All right. Any other comments or questions here? Imittani chitasyeha proktan yanaka suriti svato jnanam puta pumsam bhaktir vairagameva bha. Spotless devotees of the Lord have mentioned the source of such knowledge. How could one have knowledge of devotional service and detachment without the help of such devotees? Purport. There are many inexperienced persons who advocate self-realization without the help of a spiritual master. They decry the necessity of the spiritual master and try themselves to take his place by propagating the theory that a spiritual master is not necessary. Srimad Bhagavatam, however, does not approve this viewpoint. The contradiction is evident here that someone says, you don't need a spiritual master. That means he's assuming the position of telling us the truth, that the spiritual master is not needed. It's self-contradictory. Saraswati says, a child seeks help from a father to know how to serve and please the mother, and vice versa. Also, we pray to Krishna to help us please the Guru, and we pray to the Guru to help us in pleasing Krishna. Yes. Tulsi Priya.
Hi, Krishna Maharaj. Please accept my obeisances. I was just wondering, sometimes when we've had this Ritvik debate and people have made reference to Prabhupada saying that it's not something I've been thinking about, so I'm trying to remember it and not really succeeding, but they've made reference to Prabhupada saying things like, you know, if somebody only has access to his books, that's like having association with the spiritual master. And I was just wondering, you know, there may be quite a few people who somehow get a hold of Srila Prabhupada's books, but for whatever reason, don't have access to a physically present person to take shiksha from and to take shelter of. And so I was wondering, does Srila Prabhupada count as their spiritual master in those situations? Or, you know, can you have a spiritual master by reading their books?
Well, read the books, and what do they say? You don't need, it's again one of those self-contradictory positions. You don't need a spiritual master because all you need is because you have the books. But then if you read the books, they tell you that you need a spiritual master, and not a spiritual master who's a departed soul. The books are undoubtedly powerful, but the books tell us that we should participate in the parampara system, not that the system cuts off. If you receive a book from an exalted Uttamaधिकारी Vaishnava, otherwise there would have been no necessity to take initiation from Srila Prabhupada either. He could have just taken his books during his lifetime and said, that's it. You know, I don't need more than a book. Or we could have discovered the books of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Saraswati Thakur, and said, well, okay, you know, for you it's Prabhupada, for me it's Bhaktivinoda Thakur, or Jiva Goswami, or take your choice. These things have no standing in the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition or the instructions of Shastra. That, of course, is you know, we're sort of what's the word, rehashing old arguments here.
So would a person who has no access to a physically present guru, they have to wait for their next life? Or
well, the same thing was, you know, it's not really a question of Prabhupada's presence or absence from the world. The same question could have been and was asked during Srila Prabhupada's time. What about a person, you know, in a remote place who has no association with devotees? What about accepting Jesus Christ as your spiritual master, and so on? So what we hear from Shastra is that if one is sincere and fortunate, Bhagavan, then Guru Krishna Prasade by Bhakti Latata. Krishna makes the arrangement if one is sincere and fortunate.
thank you.
Okay, continuing the purport. There's another comment?
Yes.
Yes. Could you explain a little about the difference between Harinam initiation and Gayatri initiation? Okay. The Harinam is what we call first initiation. Gayatri is second initiation. The Harinam is the beginning. to receive the holy name of Krishna as the beginning of spiritual life. And the Gayatri initiation, second initiation, also called the Pranayana Samskara, coming closer to the spiritual master. In Gauriya Mat, the Nam is given very freely, and in one sense not taken so, yeah, it's just given very liberally. Not much is required to receive Harinam. And the real initiation is taken to be the Gayatri initiation. But Srila Prabhupada emphasized, of course, Prabhupada also said that we can be liberal about first initiation, but about second initiation, we should be strict. But he emphasized that the connection exists from the very beginning, that Harinam initiation is not sort of an offhand thing, but that the connection is established from that time. So Srila Prabhupada gave, you can say, more importance to Harinam initiation than we might find elsewhere. Srila B.R. Sridhar Maharaj explained that of the two, the Harinam initiation is in one sense more important because Harinam includes everything. The Harinam includes everything. The Gayatri initiation is a Pancharatriki function. And it's especially required for the deity worship. And yes, for the deity worship. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj said that for the Bhagavat mark, the Harinam is central. And for Pancharatriki, the Diksha, or Gayatri initiation, he compared it to two circles. The Harinam is the larger circle, and the Gayatri exists within the larger circle of Harinam. Harinam is sufficient for all purposes, but the Pancharatriki process is to help us in Harinam Seva. Is that all right? Okay. So the inexperienced persons say that self-realization, the spiritual master is not necessary. And it's very common in this sort of, in the namby-pamby world of what we sometimes call New Age philosophy or popular spirituality. The notion that you don't need a spiritual master, you just need to look within yourself. These spiritual masters are all sort of, we don't know, they're not, they're sort of fraudulent or certainly unnecessary, because the truth is within. You just need to look within yourself, and there you'll find everything. And of course, it's true, you look within yourself, and the Paramatma is there, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What more do we need? But our vision of the personality of Godhead, or our connection with the personality of Godhead within, has been interrupted since time immemorial, we've been distant from the personality of Godhead, disconnected. And therefore our inner vision is cloudy or obscured or opaque. So if everyone simply looked within, they wouldn't necessarily find the personality of Godhead. They'd find all the products of the modes of nature lodged within their hearts and bewildered by the material energy. They think that this is some sort of, this is where I get my divine, my guidance. Looking within, they're influenced by goodness, by passion, by ignorance. They look within, and everybody sees something completely different. Anyway, this notion is another nonsense. Saraswati says, a common argument I hear is that there are no pure devotees. It was a dying breed. And so, since no pure bona fide guru exists, just accept this and be a good person on your own. Well, there's several problems with this. First of all, how do you know that they're a dying breed and they don't exist? You may not have experience of meeting a pure devotee, or due to your own impurities, you may have met a pure devotee and not recognized them. There were plenty who met Srila Prabhupada and for one reason or another moved on and didn't accept him. So there are no pure devotees. How do you know? That's the first thing. But even accepting, all right, there are no pure devotees, then what will you do? Just accept this and be a good person on your own. But you won't be a good person on your own. You won't be a good person on your own. Mamamaya Durachaya, the modes of the material nature is very strong. And on our own, just to be a good person. We don't know what a good person is. We don't know who we are. We don't know what the purpose of life is. That's why approaching the spiritual master is necessary. Ajnana-timirandasya, we're born in ignorance. And then we look within. What we'll find is ignorance. We'll continue in ignorance. So it's not recommended that we just assume that there are no pure devotees. And what do we understand by pure devotee also? That's another question. We should look for sadhu sangha, sadhu sangha, sadhu sangha, sarva shastra, Bhavamatra sadhu sangha, sarva siddhi. At least there are, even if you think pure devotee is something extinct breed, still there are devotees. There are sadhus, and one is recommended to associate with devotees. And then Srila Prabhupada gives the hint that if you're looking for a spiritual master, then you should look in the association of devotees. If you're in the Mayavadi association, you'll get a Mayavadi guru. If you're in the association of materialists, you'll accept guidance from materialists. But one is advised to associate with devotees, and then in that association, seek a bona fide spiritual master. Tad vijnanartham sarvameva vigaschena. It's not optional. Buddha says in the purport to text 38, I pointed out, to disseminate transcendental knowledge, one must retire from mundane activities on the strength of enlightenment in knowledge in terms of Vedic wisdom. This is indeed striking. What advice would you give to an aspiring devotee ensconced in mundane material activities, but who has his heart set on preaching, but feels in his heart that the reason he is absorbed in mundane material activities is he does not feel qualified to give oneself entirely to preaching? How might you address persons who seem to be stuck that way? Or is that actually the heart of Varnashram Dharma, the gradual approach, and one should force oneself to accept renunciation of material activity at a certain point? Several things can be said. Certainly just to give up and say, well, I'm not qualified, so I might as well not preach, is not recommended. I may not be perfect. I may still have material attachments. I may still be in family life and absorbed in family activities, but let me preach something of Krishna consciousness. The Prabhupada encouraged us in that way. Whatever we've gotten, we should try to distribute. Otherwise, we're being miserly. If one is sort of aspires to get free, is aspiring to get free from mundane activities, but is not yet free. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, give up the shackles of Maya slowly. Someplace, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life and teachings says something like that. I don't think he's advising that we just be slow, but the idea is take a step. It's not that you just have to jump from wherever you are to sannyas or to perfection, but take some steps. One step, next step, next step, next step. One day you'll reach the goal. So that's another point. And preaching can go on along the way. Srila Prabhupada knew that we were not on the point of devotional perfection, but he encouraged us, like anything, to spread Krishna consciousness. It was one of the things. The other thing is that one should have a serious program. Reading a line like this, that one should retire from mundane activities on the strength of knowledge. One should make a serious program. Yes, Varnashram is there. And yes, I shouldn't stay in family life for all my days. The Vanaprastha ashram is therefore recommended. One could say crucial. One shouldn't just say, well, here I am and here I be. But we're meant for a progressive life of spiritual realization. So from the Grihastha ashram, then sannyas, and then Vanaprastha. And then from Vanaprastha, sannyas.
Maharaj, thank you very, very much for your kind response. Is the attitude of somebody may be doing a little preaching here or there, but may wish he could do so much more, but it's almost the internal attitude seems to be, well, since I'm not doing very much, I'm not really making much of a difference. This verse, that line that I pointed out, seems to be a very high standard. One has to retire from mundane activities in order to preach. That's what I was. That's what struck me the most. But I accept, in essence, that any preaching is good preaching. That's what how you're responding.
Well, one thing is, I think we have to let's interrogate that sentence. To disseminate transcendental knowledge, one must retire from mundane activities. So there are two ways to read that. One is that if you want to disseminate the transcendental knowledge, then first you have to retire from mundane activities. And the other way to read it is that for the sake of disseminating transcendental knowledge, one should retire from material activities. I would argue that that's more consistent with what Srila Prabhupada generally taught. Not that until you've retired from all mundane material activities, you can't distribute a book, you can't ask anyone to chant Hare Krishna. But rather that if one is serious about disseminating transcendental knowledge, then one at some point must retire from mundane activities, as he did. Is that okay? You're muted. Yes.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. Thank you.
Thank you. Tulsi Priya is there.
Hare Krishna. I just wanted to say, when we first moved to New York from Florida, I had huge ambitions of doing preaching, and I'm embarrassed to even say some of the ideas that I had because none of them have come to fruition. But we did one kirtan program in a cathedral in the city, and one young woman attended, and I explained the mantra to her, and we had a nice time. There was prasadam, and then not long after that, COVID hit, and not only did I retire from preaching activities, I retired pretty much from everything, and except keeping myself alive. And a while back, she's on Facebook. We became friends on Facebook, and I commented something to her, and she didn't strike me as someone who is very into Krishna consciousness. She was into Buddhism. She was involved in the addiction recovery community and all of that. And I thought, okay, she's a Buddhist, whatever, go forth and be Buddhist and have a nice life. And then a while back, we had some interaction on Facebook, and she said, "You helped me get started on my spiritual path." And I was like, what? And then I haven't been on Facebook so much lately, but maybe the past few months, I go on Facebook every once in a while, and I see she's associating with devotees. And so one encounter with this person who didn't seem to take to it right away, and then somehow or other she got in touch with devotees who were more active preaching. And so I was just saying that in response to Gurudas Prabhu, that, we say, I don't do much. I can't think of anybody who does less than I do, but she somehow got some little thing from the little bit that I was able to do. And then Krishna sent others who were more active and more involved to help her progress. So I not to take credit for anything, but if I hadn't done that, where would she have gotten the initial contact? So I think we can't get too down. Oh, I need to be doing more, and if I'm not doing more, then I should do nothing. It's like, whatever you do, it might turn into something. So you do what you can, and you don't do what you can't do.
Thank you. Yes. Rabin says, a karmi was arguing, my guru says you do not need to follow anyone. The devotee asked, why do you follow him? Yes. Panchatattva says, quoting from Bhakti Charamarja's book, then he said something that sounded to me like the ultimate secret of spiritual success. Maya is extremely strong because it is Krishna's potency. Daivihi esha gunamayi mama maya durachaya. It is impossible to overcome. But if you remain in the association of devotees, then Maya will not be able to touch you, because Maya is Krishna's external potency, whereas the association of devotees is Krishna's internal potency. Therefore, always remain in the association of devotees and never, ever go away from that shelter. From the book, The Ocean of Mercies. Thank you. Let's see where we are in this book right now.
Text 40.
Yeah, let's see that. Okay. It's actually an important set of arguments that Srila Prabhupada is making here about the necessity of approaching the spiritual master. Even the great transcendental scholar Vyasadeva had need of a spiritual master. And under the instruction of his spiritual master, Narada, he prepared this sublime literature, Srimad Bhagavatam. Even Lord Chaitanya, although he is Krishna himself, accepted a spiritual master. Even Lord Krishna accepted a spiritual master, Sandipani Muni, in order to be enlightened. And all the acharyas and saints of the world had spiritual masters. In Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna accepted Lord Krishna as his spiritual master, although there was no necessity of such a formal declaration. So in all cases, there's no question about the necessity of accepting a spiritual master. The only stipulation is that the spiritual master should be bona fide. That is, the spiritual master must be in the proper chain of disciplic succession, called the parampara system. Suris are great scholars, but they may not always be anagha or spotless. The anagha suri is one who is a pure devotee of the Lord. Those who are not pure devotees of the Lord, or who want to be on an equal level with him, are not anagha suri. Pure devotees have prepared many books of knowledge on the basis of authorized scriptures. Srila Rupa Goswami and his assistants, under the instructions of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, have all written various literatures for the guidance of prospective devotees. And anyone who is very serious about raising himself to the standard of a pure devotee of the Lord must take advantage of those literatures. And while I'm looking at it, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti says, this verse indicates that without Guru, knowledge is impossible. Okay. Tulsi Priya, that's a hand still up or up again? Okay. So we're at 25 after, we can stop here and have kirtan. And then we'll continue on Wednesday. It looks like it's there. Jai.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnupad Puramansa Pariprajaka Stotra Sri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anand Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Pun Radha Kundikiri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadip Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Ki Jai, Gangamai Ki Jai, Jamunamai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. Also, I should convey to Haridas Prabhu and the other friends of Bhurishan Prabhu here in Vrindavan that he conveys his respects. And we're fortunate to get his association here.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you to all the devotees for attending tonight. And thank you to ISKCON of Tawako for generously supporting, facilitating the Zoom Sangha. The links are up in the chat box to share with your friends. And if you want to support ISKCON of New Jersey, or if you want to support Maharaj in his preaching, they're there for you to take advantage of. And thank you again, Maharaj, for being with us tonight and giving us your association and giving us the blessing of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Aye.
Srila Jayādvaita Maharaj ki jai.
Aye.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you, Tulsi Priya. Thank you, Mahesh Pandit Prabhu. Panchatattva Prabhu. The Bhurishan Prabhu is remembering you also.
Oh my gosh. I can't even imagine in what context. Hare Krishna. What a blessing to be remembered by such a great soul.
Hare Krishna.
Oh, my wife wanted to mention that she's been listening to a whole series of lectures by Her Grace Jagatarini Devi Dasi, and she's really thoroughly relishing them. She's excited because they're all about the holy Dham and various holy places and all the transcendental events that took place. So she just can't wait to get to the Dham now. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Prabhupada ki jai. Samavita Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Aye.
Gaur Premanande.
Haribo.
Oh.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, all the voice good.
Thank you, Krishna.